Hello, Gov. The reason why I'm using that type of accent is because of the setting of this game. Welcome to the series that Insomniac did for the PS3 era. There you go. And this was actually in the launch window of the PS3, and apparently it carried on the console during its rough initial state. This is Resistance, Follow Man, set in jolly old UK. So if you want the true UK experience without the risk of getting stabbed in the street, this is for you.
Yeah,
Is
so
it?
basically,
Yes, because
Unfortunately,
Britain is known for having people being shot all the time.
Let me get this straight. Unfortunately, we play as an American, meaning that instead we risk the risk of getting shot in the street all the time.
Oh dear.
So,
oh dear.
You know, is it weird that I may have heard of this series, but it completely fell under my
ever
radar.
since the start of the PS4, because the last game was in 2012, ever since the start of the PS4, the series fell into mid-obscurity and has been only referenced a bit in stuff like Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. But guys, Ellie got a themed t-shirt in Last of Us Part 2, so that has to count for something, right?
But yeah, like...
I get the feeling, well, I'm not gonna be wrong, I'm not saying Insomniac didn't care about this series. Well,
I will have to mention this after the third game is over, because you need the context. For the time being, the story.
Oh, another video game taking place involving Russia.
It's an alternate history in which after World War I, things did not go as fucked up, meaning World War II never happened, but at the end of the 40s, in the beginning of the 50s, something happened in Russia that fucked the entire country over and produced the enemies of this game, the Chimera.
Let me guess, radioactive.
We will get a sort of an explanation in the sequels on what the Chimeras are and how they became to be. This first game already tells us a bit.
Topical.
And
So...
there goes my country, and there goes Pedro.
Oh no!
Oh no! Oh,
And there goes Dwiz.
And there goes Dwiz too.
It's
But
okay,
hey,
guys.
at least America is safe.
Yes,
for
at least
now.
America's okay, guys. We can all breathe a sigh of relief.
It's kind of a plot point that you will see more in the reports at the end of this, but America has its own propaganda where they hide information from the masses and instead try to send units, like the one of our protagonists, to aid the British and gather intel.
So basically...
And here's our protagonist, Nathan Hale, essentially one of the very generic FPS protagonist man.
I swear,
I get even in terms... I get what they were trying to do. They were trying to replicate the Doom mythos by having the everyday generic guy rising up and becoming a beast, killing the enemies. But let me tell you, Nathan Hale here is really on the generic side. In this first game, he has a total of 10 lines, if not less.
Wait, hold on. So it's post-World War I, but I guess America still revolutionized to the point of World War II, Escaffair.
Yes, but World War II never happened. That's the important part. The fascist dictatorships of Italy and Germany never rose to power because of essentially a chain of events. That's what you need to know about this divergence in history.
I mainly mention this because part of the reason America went so above and beyond with our war budget and technology was because we were trying to not just match, but surpass the growing weapons at the time.
Essentially, America observed the Chimera epidemic invasion from the distance and prepped for a potential assault on them, which hasn't happened yet, mind you, but also to, prepare troops to send them to study the Chimera. So essentially, it's more of a getting ready kind of thing. And our protagonist, Nathan Hale, is from one of the units that are sent to York. Basically, Dwebs, this game is gonna be a sort of a tour towards the UK, major cities in the UK, to see if our protagonist can, work things out.
So tell me.
As the narration tells us, apparently he's going to be the sole survivor of his unit. So.
And also, Grumpy Face here is voiced by
David
Crank,
Kay.
aka David Kay.
Oh, David Kay!
Yeah, it's understandable. So, the game is structured in a similar way to Doom. You have episodes contained in the cities of the UK, and each episode has usually 2 or 3 acts, usually 3 acts, but a couple of them have only 2, which gets loaded. Then you perform. They're not really lengthy, 10-minute stops if you're doing things right. But and then they're over.
Do we get to see the Orc dungeon?
Don't think so.
So tell me, Tia, when's the part?
I will also say this. This is a launch title of a PS3, but it has decent graphics and runs very smoothly. Sure, it's still 30 FPS, but I never really seen it deep.
Wow.
So that's actually impressive for a launch title.
Well, I expect that from Insomnia.
Well, not only that, but guys, a
Also-
7th gen game that actually looks colorful.
No, this first title is heavily desaturated.
Colorful by shooter standards.
I mean,
We're gonna get. This is very similar to a Medal of Honor game in terms of desaturation. We're gonna start getting colors with the second game.
I definitely would say it's colorful by
I mean,
most
this
shooter
looks about-
standards.
This looks kind of like the first Gears of War, so I'm not too bothered by this.
A bit. The Gears of War still relatively has color, but Gears more on the browns, while this instead is more on the grays.
I can get what it's going for, that sort of old-fashioned sepia tone you see in, like, World War I, World War II-esque flashback scenes in movies, but with color.
I'll be able to explain more later on, because trust me, there are plenty of sections in the game where nothing really is happening, so it will give me time to explain. But just to tell you in advance one thing in particular, these games are relatively brutal because we still have. First of all, Insomniac had not developed yet a first-person shooter until this point, and they were taking. You can tell that if you had experience with previous shooters like, Doom, Quake, and similar, you know that they have. Hold on, first let me read the intro of the weapon. The M5A2 Folsom Carabine is a standard issue rifle for the US Army Rangers. The Folsom is nicknamed the Paddle for its wide wooden stock and ability to spank an enemy. The M5A2 uses the same .303 round as the British rifle, number 6x6, pressing L1, fires the underslug and 240mm grenade launcher. The M200 uses high explosive grenades, which can immediately multiply the firepower available to an individual soldier.
There's
Again,
that typical Insomniac wit.
Well, okay, classic also school FPS. Each weapon has a primary fire and the secondary fire that functions more as an utility of sorts. What you're seeing, however, only in this first part is a new game plus, so mostly recorded out of necessity more than anything. But I will have to talk more about it, the difference with New Game Plus later, because this first game does something unique with New Game Plus. What I would like to pay attention to a second is the RL bar on the bottom left of the screen. It's divided in 4 tags, and as you can see, right now is fixed on a certain point. Later on, for story reason, after this first level, mind you, our protagonist will gain the ability to regen health, but don't worry, this is not really on the same level of, a lot of shooters done in this era, in a sense that if an enemy damages you to the point of not depleting entirely the tech, after a few seconds, it will actually regen to the end of the tech. So basically, you can get a bit of punishment, but still have a threshold you can arrive to. So it's a bit of a compromise between having, a traditional health bar with the regeneration mechanic without one overstepping over the other. This is slightly important because the following games will do something different with this.
Also, Tio, interestingly enough, the behind the voice actors page for this game also credits the Italian voice for the main character.
Okay, information about this game is a bit wonky, but first of all, I think I'm going to get another weapon to his enter house, so I will explain after.
It's Matteo Zanotti.
Hold on.
I noticed that these Chimeras...
There you go, the Reapers. The Chimera Reaper's carbine is designed for the hit-and-run attacks of the Slipskull skirmishers. Its light white and collapsing frame keeps the creature's hands free until the weapons are needed. Slipskull's independently focusing eyes give it the distinct advantage of wielding 2 Reapers at once. Hold the reticule over enemy to engage target acquisition, and once the reticule is red, shots fired by holding R1 or R1 will track the enemy anywhere in the field of view. Each Reaper can track a separate enemy. Essentially, dual-wielding pistols, which are very unique because essentially in this game, this allows you to have huge firepower to concentrate on an enemy. However, this is a New Game Plus weapon, because one gimmick, so you will not see for most of the game, because one gimmick that this game does is that deliberately hiding a few weapons that are only available in a second playthrough.
Huh.
This is stupid, and rightfully this was not kept for future games.
I'm guessing these weapons are like super powerful, and that's why they're locked behind that.
Yes and no. Some of them actually do have decent fire powers, but they don't really feel like they needed to be hidden this kind of way. Like, it really feels an artificial way to force you to play the game a second time.
Yeah, like...
I don't know. I think it could have been done better, especially because in true FPS tradition, you have a weapon wheel to choose, all the weapons you acquired, and of course, killing an enemy with the corresponding weapon, will give you, ammo of that. So as soon as you get the weapon, mind you.
Yeah,
the thing is that
sorry.
some enemies do have weapons that just are basically dangled in front of you, who you do not get until New Game Plus. So you spend most of the game saying, "Damn, I wish I got that," but you can't until you reach the New Game Plus, unfortunately. Also, like I was saying before, this game can be very brutally hard, especially for today's standards. Even on easy mode, you're gonna die a lot. So trust me, you're gonna see a lot of jump cuts of me just editing away a lot of that. But as a general thought, I'm playing on medium skills for at least so far. I've been playing 1 and 2. And I can tell you I finished both of them on medium, so I'm probably just gonna keep that also for free.
Is it tough in the sense that, like, enemies have a lot of firepower, or is it a case where it's blindsiding?
Dealing, okay, it's a bit tough to explain because there are a lot of rules about shooters that a lot of novices might not know, like what hit scan is supposed to be. But for basically the gist of it that you need to know is that the enemies deal a lot of punishment, and you cannot take that much. This is not a John Rambo simulator where you can just stand in the open and absorb bullets while you're decimating the enemies.
So it's the old 1886 problem.
A bit. Ideally, yes, a bit. The thing is that it's hard to explain, but the ideal balance that Insomniac wanted to have. Hold on. First of all, the new weapon acquire. The cool thing is that you can have alien guns in this, starting with the Bullseye, the Chimera main battle rifle. It has a rapid cyclic rate and a high damage capability. Pressing L1 fires a homing tag. Once a foe is marked, the tag will draw the Bullseye's primary fire. Skillful placement of a tag allows the entire magazine or ammunition to be placed on a target from the safety of cover. It is also very effective against fast-moving targets. The trade-off is it's more powerful than carabine, but the shots are dispersed, so it encourages you to use the secondary weapon, the homing tag, to just tag an enemy and then riddle it with bullets. You can do that also behind cover.
I think I understand the issue with the difficulty. Based off of what you're describing, that sounds like a shooter, but if it was already set to hard mode, essentially. The idea that, it's more realistic wherein you gotta dodge the bullets better, whereas the enemies could probably clock you out easily like in real life. Again!
The thing is that, again, remember, Insomniac did not have experience in making a first-person shooter, which is different than what they were doing with Ratchet and Clank. So, what they tried to do have a bit of both. They wanted to have something where the character moves relatively, with a decent enough of speed, and have a bit of a cool arsenal, like Doom Marine, for example, for Doom. But they also wanted to try to get a bit of the audience that prefer more the cover system and, the more gritty type of war setting, like the Medal of Honor or Gears audience. This game gets compared a lot to Gears of War because of this, but this middle ground is a bit rough. The sequels will definitely change things a bit for the better and sometimes a bit for the worse, but all in due time. For the time being, we're actually already at the end of the first level. Again, Hale is reconnected to his unit, and every time you do this field transition like this,
it feels like the guy just blacks out and faints.
I know, right?
Well, we're actually close to that.
Oh god, it's 007 Legends all over again.
Actually,
it came out before that game, so...
The Chimera use primarily also this tactic, a swarm of insects similar to the scarabs in the Mummy Brendan Fraser movie, which literally enters your body forcefully, like so, and infect you. We will learn more about that very soon. The gist of it is that the story is narrated between regular cutscene in the present and a recollection of event from, I think she's a lieutenant, one of the people in higher charge of the British Resistance Army.
One of the soldiers, a sergeant, suddenly
That's an awkward pose.
It's like the Yamcha pose.
Like, it's not even like they had to have him in that pose. That's a still frame. Also, is it just me, or were there quite a few protagonists that just happened to be called Nathan in that era of gaming?
Well, not that much. Yes, it's coincidental because of Uncharted, but nothing more than that.
Wasn't the
Besides, Nathan is it's a relatively common name still.
I guess. It's just that I do get the semblance that this was definitely made around that era where shooters weren't yet at the point of oversaturation, but they were on their way to it.
I have a bigger discourse prepared, but it's not for this part, Drova, because trust me, in the meantime, between the Gears game and this, I basically made a conscious effort to get back to the genre, to actually always say, maybe it's the boomer in me that's just feeling the age, but I kind of felt compelled to actually get properly informed on the matter. So trust me, Drova, I have something that I would like to say in time.
Cool. This is also the only game in the series composed by David Bergeron.
The Ratchet & Clank composer.
Yeah, after this he went back to Ratchet & Clank for the next few games.
The score is there. I don't think it's bad, but it's nothing that really stands out. The third game probably has the things that really stick the most out of it.
I am curious. Was this game potentially executively mandated?
Well, okay. The interview that we will actually see in the extras part actually says otherwise, because Ted Price mentions that this was more of a challenge that Insomniac wanted to have for themselves. And, they were still committed in, continuing also Ratchet & Clank. But I do genuinely still get the idea that at the dawn of the PS3 era, Sony rounded up all of its major studios, or whatever, they were already acquired or working for them, and told them, the HD era is at the dawn, you have to adhere to this kind of schedule, do what you want, but stick to these. Because it really, really feels coincidental that all of the studios, shifted gears for the HD era, including stuff like Level 5.
Yeah, and if there's one thing I know from experience, where sometimes, yes, for PR's sake, they'll say, oh, we wanted to do it. When almost every studio is doing it, usually the answer ends up being the head honchos wanted to get with the trends.
And the cost of sounding a bit mean, if this was the only thing Insomniac did during the PS3 era, I would be a bit more disappointed, because let me tell you, I don't think this series is really bad or anything, but if this was the only output of the company, it would have felt like a genuine step down.
What you said earlier, Tio, that was making me imagine what if Level 5 actually made a first-person shooter.
Well, no, that's the thing. Well, Tio's talking about White Knight Chronicles. But let me say one thing actually about the game. It is true that the game runs really well and looks good. That being said, I did notice some VC, lack of
I noticed that.
And some screen tearing, so there is that.
It gets better, Pedro, on a thing, because I just discovered it. I did not even knew the first time I play. But first, just to know, there you go. You notice that the health regen, and also you start to get your health packs, so these yellow tubes kind of thing. Cherish them, because they're not going to be everywhere, and the checkpoints are a bit starving for this game, so every inch that you gain counts. Get this, Pedro. Two of the things of the options that you do unlock, the things that you unlock in the second game after you beat the campaign, thankfully at any difficulty, but things that you unlock with that are regulation of the field of view and the motion blur.
What?
Stuff that would be accessibility options or regular option in any PC game. You have to beat the game Resistance 2 once to actually unlock them.
Holy cow, they would have been buried for that kind of move in this current day and age.
I will say again, I'm getting ahead of myself, because Resistance 2 needs its own talk because of the gameplay changes that it made, and not just these. But I will say this, because of a couple of different elements, probably what I just said was one of them, but not the catalyst. Resistance 2 was very, very polarizing in reception. to the point where Ted Price himself actually had a PR statement that said that he actually felt sorry for for the things that the game got criticized for, and actually wanted to be committed to improve things, which we will see in eventually Resistance 3. So at the very least, Ted Price, who normally has a bit of a jerk attitude from what I heard, at the very least in this case, did actually eat a bit of humble pie.
It's more, okay, yeah. Well, no, it's okay. See, here's the thing. No, I can't. No, it definitely shows. Because okay, with Guerrilla Games, I'm more. I'm probably they don't count because they already were making. They made Killzone 1 on the PS2 before.
Yeah.
Oh, Guerrilla Games were definitely in the industry. Yeah.
To Guerrilla Games' credit, with Killzone 2 and 3, they were just continuing the series they started. So I won't count them as part of that.
Oh no.
They were probably just making Killzone 2 and 3 because, well...
Same goes for Ben Studios because they continued Siphon... Well, no, actually, no, they did not continue Siphon Filter. What were Ben Studios doing in the PS3 era?
Remember, they made the Vita Uncharted game.
Also, the PSP versions for this series and Killzone, I know that. But I don't remember if they did any PS3 titles.
They didn't make any PS3 titles.
There's one thing I want to clarify.
Like Ben Studio was kind of like on a low key with, but it was only on the PS4 with Days Gone that they started really getting back into consoles. Go on.
I still had to play the hold on. First of all, also another thing typical of military shooters of his era: vehicle sections, specifically with a tank.
Whoa!
Thankfully,
The fence just blew up.
Yes, even in higher difficulties, I can tell you that the tank section is very generous. You can take a lot of punishment, and they're basically just a roller coaster of you basically hit the target.
I remember
that.
I remember that famous period in British history where a tank was riding through York and blowing everything up.
America, fuck yeah.
Coming again, say the mother flipping day, yeah. So,
okay. No. So with Killzone, with Naughty Dog, I'm a bit more on the leanings of Naughty Dog because to their credit, yes, Uncharted has shooting in it, but it's not like it's a game on this style. It's still colorful. There's puzzles. It's an action adventure. So I will argue that one probably doesn't count.
I don't think Uncharted.
Well, I also mentioned the transitioning towards more photorealism because also Sucker Punch did that with the influence.
If I may clarify a thing, usually when people complain about the oversaturation of the shooter genre, they often are not including, series that were already shooters at that point, or studios that were already doing that stuff. But no, the main thing comes from not just the presence of shooters, but the presence of shooters that were copying and pasting the usual formula. You're some average Joe who rises to prominence, and you know what? Look, not to say the gameplay formula didn't work. Don't fix one ain't broken. The problem was when it was getting so samey that all that mattered was really the story. Not a bad thing, but not the best way to get a bang from your buck.
And I can tell you that despite not having a lot of stories these games, they do try to make it different from the standard Russian invasion that COD and Medal of Honor wanted to have, around the same time. It's a more an homage to sci-fi movies of the 50s, just with its own particular take. Though I can tell you, IMDb and Wikipedia have confusing ideas who wrote this, because one, IMDb is telling me that Brian Hastings wrote it, or at least was an additional writer, while Wikipedia tells me that Josh Wall instead was the writer of this. So I don't really know which is it. Anyway, for this mission, basically you had to hold a position in this section. There will be a couple of these where instead of traveling from point A to point B, you just had to defend one location for the entirety of it.
I will be doing the end product. It has subtitles, which is more than
even the actual dimensions of them seems to be decent enough instead of being minuscule. So
not just that, remind me. I don't think even God of War.
I haven't tried them yet, to be honest. Because I played it usually with Italian dub, I still had to play it in its original format, so I haven't seen them. personally.
No, because I even played the PS4 remaster, not even the PS3 version. And no, if I remember correctly, it didn't have subtitles because God of War took its sweet ass time to finally get subtitles.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So it can become a bit of an annoying, especially considering how the sound mixing in 1 and 2 is not the best.
I'm not really sure that this series deserves, but think should have maybe a remake in terms of proposition. Just porting these games would be fine, but I can tell you it might not reach a lot of audience, mostly due to its difficulties. Again, unless it's toned down a bit potentially, I can tell you a lot of casual gamers will probably be discouraged to try this out because they will die a lot already in the first level and will be like, okay, this is not for me, dropped.
If I may,
just to explain.
Hold on, Jova. Come on, Pedro.
No. Good. I have a long thing to say, so go ahead.
Regarding this game's legacy and why we may not get a remaster, again, I have not seen enough to judge how these games will be, but I can recall the trajectories on how it was. Like, these games were certainly talked about, but there was never a big cry for them to continue, especially when we got to the new generation of gaming. Granted,
I can tell you in terms of reception and sales, this one, like I said, this one had to carry the PS3 in its launch because stuff like Genji Days of Bliss certainly
it got 2 direct sequels and PSP spin-offs, so it must have done well.
I don't know how much sales, but again, like Pedro said, decently enough. The second one, if I recall correctly, is the most commercially successful, but it was, like I said, polarized. And while the third is actually instead the best received, it was unfortunately smack dab in the middle of a crowded release period in which stuff like Modern Warfare 3, I think Uncharted 3 was around the corner, and especially Batman Arkham City. So it was kind of, a bit pressed by the competition.
It's interesting because the director of Resistance 3 went on to direct Sunset Overdrive and Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart.
A lot of the people that still work at Insomniac these days did work on this in some kind of fashion. People that had worked on the Spider-Man games or, Hi-Fi Rush. So yes.
As for why this series may not be remembered as much, my best guess is that it got swept up in the general wave of the oversaturation. Not even saying that it was
I can tell you it has a relatively substantial type of fan base to the point where it also had a bit of an unfortunate, a bit of bad luck, because this is the one major franchise that at the time was relevant that does not have a playable character in PlayStation Stars Battle Royale. It has 2 stages, technically, but not a playable character. Well, apparently, the studios did mention that they had considered essentially a moveset for a generic Chimera grunt. So where is that?
Well, here's a... no, I can kind of... okay, what does Hi-Fi Rush have to do with this game, too? Hi-Fi Rush.
No, I mentioned that people who worked on this series have ended up working on that, too.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Interesting.
I don't remember who specifically, but... sorry, not Hi-Fi Rush. Sorry, Sunset Overdrive. My bad.
Oh, yeah,
sorry.
I thought so.
Sorry. I got confused.
No, I got you. But just to... Okay, first off, about the game itself. Okay. Who the hell thought that was a good idea of locking those options behind? Like, it's just like, okay, I appreciate the idea of giving us the ability to turn off motion blur, because that's what I always do in games whenever I can, because I don't like motion blur. But
that's the thing, Pedro. It's not even a turn on and off. It's actually a slider. I haven't seen it that much.
No.
Yeah.
It definitely screams this was our first time doing this type of genre.
Yeah, it's just the locking behind the input is just so bizarre. Like, somebody actually made that decision and apparently nobody objected. That's what boggles my mind. But just to end of the level, I guess.
Yes, and particularly the end of York. I'll let you finish after the cutscene before the
Sure.
Before we end the part. Because the recurring thing for this game alone, don't get attached to the side characters like this lieutenant, because unfortunately for Nathan Hale, they tend to die after he meets them a lot.
Oh, the humanity! How does this affect Nathan as a character, making him have to go through trial and tribulation as his character?
I'm gonna be generous. I understand again the fact that Nathan doesn't have too much of a personality. Again, we wanted to reinvent the Doom Marine mythos. I can tell you that the next game improves on that.
I can't help but love the irony, given how
the
Doom also got reinvented to actually pump more character into the character.
I will mention also that eventually when I need to talk about the FPS genre later on, but for the time being, this is what we recounted, the idea that the Chimera invasion happens in stages. First, those scarabs, enemies, enter, infect you, and paralyze you, effectively put you in a coma. Then these things show up, kind of like in War Worlds, abduct you, and brought you into conversion centers. We will learn in the next part what the Chimera do in order to create more of their kind from the human captured, and let me tell you, it's not pretty. The second game ramps up even the horror even more. Like, you thought that the Locust torturing people in Gears was already cruel, potentially, incredibly cruel and mean. The Chimeras are worse, and I don't mean in a sense that it's bad, but you will feel the horrors of what these creatures actually bring to it. But before we end the part, Pedro.
I can understand what they're going for with the whole 50s B movie sci-fi shit, but it feels like the plot still moves way too quickly.
Yes.
We get no time to absorb anything, really. But no. See, okay, let me just to explain something to Dwebs regarding the level 5 thing. Well, how about this? Okay, when you think level 5, what's the type of game you think of? Games made for the whole family, for all ages. Yeah. That have that Pixar-ish, for lack of a better term, thing to it, where they try to have strong stories that appeal to kids and adults, right?
And also the anime aesthetic.
The anime aesthetic as well, so obvious. And yet, look at this in the PS3 era, Webs, where this was back when I was still working with Sony's Japan studio making RPGs for Sony consoles, and for the HD era, the PS3. Like Theo said, Sony went to level 5 and said, okay, for the PS3 RPGs that you're gonna make them. Okay, somebody at Japan Studio thought it was a good idea. Okay, we can't do anime stuff like we did on the PS2 because apparently that's not popular now anymore. So you need to make a more realistic art style. So that's the White Knight Chronicles games are the only level 5 games that have a realistic art style to them. And you can't do the whole whimsical Ghibli-ish tone that you usually do. You need to make a more serious and mature Matsuno-style political plot for this RPG.
Because that's what sold at the time, or so they thought.
Because it's just like, again, so it's level 5 basically trying to emulate a style that is not what they excel at, And again, much like Insomniac with this series, it's not like they still did their best what they could. And again, for us, I still think those games are good for what they are. The music is amazing, I can tell you that, because if there's one thing White Knight Chronicles does not fail level 5 wise, is that once again it has amazing music. Like, again, adhering to the rule that there's no bad music in a level 5 game. So White Knight Chronicles does not break that rule, I can tell you that much. It's by the composer of Jeanne d'Arc. But no, this was kind of the Sony thing at the time. Even their partners who don't belong to them, like, they would go, okay, we want, probably, think about this. If it wasn't for this thing that Sony had at the time, probably probably Ni no Kuni 1 would have been the first PS3 level 5 game we'd have gotten. But no, level 5 had to make that game on their own without Sony's help. Can you imagine, Teo, if level 5 funded Ni no Kuni 1? It would have, the presentation would have been.
I mentioned, well, not technically on that, but in case it could fit. I told you already. Back when I was playing Tales of Berseria, all the time I was like, man, I really wish Sony had a first-party title like this.
Yeah.
Anyway, tuning for the next part when we transition from York to another British city. More shooting ensues. See ya.
Ta-ta.